At this point, I'm gonna go ahead and get that last bolt out of the way, pull that steering column, and we'll start lowering it down. Slowly drop it. Just watch where your brackets are. There we go. Down to the floor we go. We got plenty of room to do what we need now. Alright, we've dropped the steering column down. These studs right here are where those 13mm nuts went on. You can see all 4 of them. One reason why we got to drop it, of course, make room for the dash move. The second is, on the back side of these 2 front studs, there's a 10mm bolt here and 10mm bolt here. Those hold the dash to this aluminum assembly here that everything mounts to on the firewall. So that's going to stay here, but the dash can move. So you got to get these 2 10mm out. If you don't get these 2 10s out, the dash is not going to move. So that's the second reason why we dropped the column. So go ahead and back these 2 10s out and keep them to the side. Alright, so this is about when the magic starts happening. Now you got 2 options here. If you got floor mats, put the floor mats on the seats right here, so when the dash is up against it, it won't cause any blemishes. Just don't have floor mats, so I'm just going to put nice fender covers on both seats. And I also put it, trying to hang it over the steering column on the other side. Now, all I got to do is lift up, wiggle a little bit, the other side comes loose. I can now lean it up against the seats. And there we go. Now you can actually start seeing the AC box. So now all we got to do is worry about the fasteners inside, and we also got the fasteners on the outside, which include stuff like heater hoses and AC lines. Alright, now we got the dash back. You can actually see the AC box assembly. Here's actually where your recirc door is. Here's where we're going to be installing that cabin filter from Gino's garage. I want to point out there's 3 fasteners inside you got to get to. You've got one down here, right there on the bottom of the floor right there with a piece of sheet metal coming out. You got one there. You got one further back here in between these 2 vents, these dash vents that I'll show you. And you got one over here on the other side of the recirc door housing right up in this area. So you got a total of 3 10mm. 2 of them are going to be nuts, and the bottom one's going to be a bolt. And that's what's holding the box up against the firewall. Now, the insulation that goes up against the firewall will sometimes come stuck to the box. So when you're trying to get your box out when it's time, you may have to reach up in there and try to pry that insulation off, because the rubbery coating on it wants to have a tendency to stick to the box sometimes. So as you keep pulling and you get a kind of elastic feeling going on, that's what's going on. Try to give you a little better view of the 2 upper nuts. There's one right there. And if you go further down in between those 2 vents right there, you can see that one as well. So we start panning back, working our way back out, and if I come down, you can actually see where that 10mm bolt goes right there on that piece of sheet metal coming up. So there you go. You got your 3 bolts. 2 of them are nuts, excuse me, and the bottom one is a bolt, and they are 10mm. So go ahead and take those off. Being that the job is AC related, it basically means we're going to have to be getting the Freon out of the system. So you're going to need an AC recovery machine to go ahead and remove any of the Freon that's already in it. And also the heater core is part of the AC box, so we need to do one of 2 things. You can either drain all the antifreeze out, or you can actually pinch off the hoses and take the heater hoses off of the heater core that way, and that way you only have to top it off. So if you're going to be doing the pinch off the heater hose technique, I recommend waiting until the engine's completely cooled off, then open up your radiator cap, make sure all the pressure is bled off the system. As long as there's no pressure, put the cap back on, crimp off your lines, and then work on getting the hose clamps and the hoses off. If you're going to go ahead and drain it, make sure you got a very large catch pan, because this thing holds approximately 4 gallons. Your typical bucket's not going to hold enough. Keep an eye on it. That way, if you need to, you can go ahead and go back with fresh antifreeze as well. So you're kind of doing almost like a coolant drain and fill at the same time. So you get 2 processes there you can try. Now that we're sure that all the Freon's out of the system, right here, if you follow the lines, AC lines, here's where your low pressure fitting was. This is actually where the lines bolt directly to the AC evaporator. You get your low pressure line and high pressure line. In the middle, there's actually a stud that sticks out that's got a 13mm nut. We need to take that 13mm nut off and then wiggle the lines loose so they're no longer bolted to the evaporator. Alright, so we got the lines loose. Move to the side. Now, if you look directly to the side of the coolant bottle right here, you'll see a stud sticking through. That stud has a sheet metal bracket that goes around it. But that stud's actually part of the AC box. There's a couple bolts that come through the firewall that are fastened from the outside. We already know about the 3 on the inside. This nut needs to be taken off. That's nothing more than a 10 millimeter. Let's go ahead and take that out. Now we're underneath the coolant bottle. It's kind of hard to see from up above. I'm trying to show you where the next bolt is or slash nut we need to take off. Here's a wiring harness with a routing clip right there that pushes onto the washer bottle. Just follow your way up to here in this corner right here. There's actually a stud that sticks out with a 10 millimeter bolt or nut on it. That's the one we'll be taking loose next. Once you got all the nuts off the back of the firewall, off the 2 studs, and you got the 3 from the inside off, you can actually start pulling the box loose. And as you pull it in, one thing that can help you is as you pull it in, the heater hose is still attached. I can now get to the clamps if I want to. It's a little tight under the hood, but inside the passenger compartment here, I can still get to the upper clamp easy and try to break it loose and get the hose off, and then work on the bottom one as well. Because it is a rubber hose, so there is some flex, so you can get to it fairly easy from the inside. So that's another alternative.